Thus the Persians escaped. The Scythians sought the Persians, but missed them again. Their judgment of the Ionians is, that if they are regarded as free men they are the basest and most craven in the world; but if they are reckoned as slaves, none love their masters more, or desire less to escape. Thus have the Scythians taunted the Ionians. Darius marched through Thrace to Sestos on the Chersonesus. From there, he crossed over with his ships to Asia, leaving Megabazus as his commander in Europe, a Persian whom he once honored by saying among the Persians what I note here. Darius was about to eat pomegranates, and no sooner had he opened the first of them than his brother, Artabanus, asked him what he would like to have as many of as there were seeds in his pomegranate. Then Darius said that he would rather have that many men like Megabazus than make all Hellas subject to him. By speaking thus among the Persians, the king honored Megabazus, and now he left him behind, at the head of 80,000 of his army. This Megabazus is forever remembered by the people of the Hellespont for replying, when he was told at Byzantium that the people of Chalcedon had founded their town 17 years before the Byzantines had founded theirs, that the Chalcedonians must at that time have been blind, for had they not been, they would never have chosen the worst site for their city when they might have had the better. This Megabazus, now left his commander in the country, subjugated all the people of the Hellespont who did not take the side of the Persians. At the same time that he was doing this, another great force was sent against Libya, for the reason that I shall give after I finish the story that I am going to tell now. The descendants of the crew of the Argo were driven out by the Pelagasians who carried off the Athenian women from Broron. After being driven out of Lemnos by them, they sailed away to Lacedaemon, and there they camped on Tugitum and kindled a fire. Seeing it, the Lacedaemonians sent a messenger to inquire who they were and where they came from. They answered the messenger that they were Minyae, descendants of the heroes who had sailed in the Argo and put in at Lemnos, and there begot their race. Hearing the story of the lineage of the Minyae, the Lacedaemonians sent a second time and asked why they had come into Laconia and kindled a fire. They replied that, having been expelled by the Pelagasians, they had come to the land of their fathers, as was most just, and their wish was to live with their fathers' people, sharing in their rights and receiving allotted pieces of land. The Lacedaemonians were happy to receive the Minyae on the terms which their guest desired. The chief cause of their consenting was that Tyndaredae had been in the ship's company of the Argo, so they received the Minyae and gave them land, and distributed them among their own tribes. The Minyae immediately married, and gave in marriage to others the women they had brought from Lemnos. But in no time these Minyae became imperious, demanding an equal right to the kingship, and doing other impious things. Hence the Lacedaemonians resolved to kill them, and they seized them and cast them into prison. When the Lacedaemonians execute, they do it by night, never by day. Now when they were about to kill the prisoners, the wives of the Minyae, who were natives of the country, daughters of leading Spartans, asked permission to enter the prison and each converse with her husband. The Lacedaemonians granted this, not expecting that there would be any treachery from them. But when the wives came into the prison, they gave their husbands all their own garments, and themselves put on the men's clothing. So the Minyae passed out in the guise of women dressed in women's clothing, and thus escaping, once more camped on the Tugitum. Now about this same time, Tharus, a descendant of Polynicus through Thasander, Tisamenus, and Auticion, was preparing to lead out colonists from Lacedaemon. This Tharus was of the line of Cadmus, and was an uncle on their mother's side to Aristodemus' sons Eurysthenes and Procles, and while these boys were yet children he held the royal power of Sparta as regent. But when his nephews grew up and became kings, then Tharus could not endure to be a subject when he had had a taste of supreme power, and said he would no longer stay in Lacedaemon, but would sail away to his family. On the island now called Thera, but then called Calliste, there were descendants of Membliarus the son of Piocles, a Phoenician, for Cadmus the son of Agenor had put in at the place now called Thera during his search for Europa, and having put in, either because the land pleased him, or because for some other reason he desired to do so, he left on this island his own relation Membliarius together with other Phoenicians. These dwelt on the island of Calliste for 8 generations before Tharus came from Lacedaemon. It was these that Tharus was preparing to join, taking with him a company of people from the tribes. His intention was to settle among the people of Calliste and not drive them out, but claim them as in fact his own people. So when the Minyae escaped from prison and camped on Tegetum, and the Lacedaemonians were planning to put them to death, Tharus interceded for their lives, that there might be no killing, promised to lead them out of the country himself. The Lacedaemons consented to this, and Tharus sailed with 3 30-oared ships to join the descendants of Mamblirius, taking with him not all the Minyae but only a few, for the greater part of them made their way to the lands of the Perarete and the Caucanes, and after having driven these out of their own country, they divided themselves into 6 companies and established the cities of Leprium, Macystus, Phryxae, Phrygia, Epium, and Nudium in the land they had won. Most of these were in my time taken and sacked by the Elians. As for the island Calliste, it was called Thera, after its colonist. But as Tharus' son would not sail with him, his father said that he would leave him behind as a sheep among wolves, after which saying the boy got the nickname of Olycus, and it so happened that this became his customary name. He had a son Aegeus, from whom the Agadae, a great Spartan clan, take their name. The men of this clan, finding that none of their children lived, set up a temple of the avenging spirits of Laius and Oedipus, by the instruction of an oracle, after which their children lived. It fared thus too with the children of the Agadae at Thera. So far in this story the Lacedaemonian and Therian records agree; for the rest we have only the word of the Therians. Grinus, son of Asinius, king of Thera, descendant of this same Tharus, came to Delphi bringing a hecatomb from his city; among others of his people, Battus, son of Polymnestus, came with him, a descendant of Euphemus of the Minian clan. When Grinus, king of Thera, asked the oracle about other matters, the priestess's answer was that he should found a city in Libya. "Lord, I am too old and heavy to stir. Command one of these younger men to do this," answered Grinus, pointing to Battus as he spoke. No more was said then, but when they departed, they neglected to obey the oracle, since they did not know where Libya was, and were afraid to send a colony out to an uncertain destination. For 7 years after this there was no rain in Thera; all the trees in the island, except one, withered. The Therians inquired at Delphi again, and the priestess mentioned the colony they should send to Libya. So, since there was no remedy for their ills, they sent messengers to Crete to find any Cretan or traveller there who had travelled to Libya. In their travels about the island, these came to the town of Itanus, where they met a Murex fisherman named Corobius, who told them that he had once been driven off course by winds to Libya, to an island there called Plataea. They hired this man to come with them to Thera. From there, just a few men were sent aboard ship to spy out the land first, guided by Corobius to the aforesaid island Plataea. These left him there with provisions for some months, and themselves sailed back with all speed to Thera to bring news of the island. But after they had been away for longer than the agreed time, and Corobius had no provisions left, a Samian ship sailing for Egypt, whose captain was Colaus, was driven off her course to Plataea, where the Samians heard the whole story from Corobius and left him provisions for a year. They then put out to sea from the island and would have sailed to Egypt, but an easterly wind drove them from their course, and did not abate until they had passed through the Pillars of Hercules, and came providentially to Tartessus. Now this was at that time an untapped market; hence the Samians, of all the Greeks whom we know with certainty, brought back from it the greatest profit on their wares except Sostratus of Aegina, son of Laodamas. No one could compete with him. The Samians took 6 talents, a tenth of their profit, and made a bronze vessel with it, like an argolic cauldron, with griffins' heads, projecting from the rim all around. They set this up in their temple of Hera, supporting it with 3 colossal kneeling figures of bronze, each 12 feet high. What the Samians had done was the beginning of a close friendship between them and the men of Cyrene and Thera. As for the Therians, when they came to Thera after leaving Corobius on the island, they brought word that they had established a settlement on an island off Libya. The Therians determined to send out men from their 7 regions, taking by lot one of every pair of brothers, and making Battus leader and king of all. Then they manned 2 50-oared ships and sent them to Plataea. End of Volume 2, Part 6.